What Not to Wear was one of the early 2000s most iconic makeover shows, and it recently came back with a makeover of its own. The iconic duo, Stacey and Clinton, are back in their new show, Wear Whatever the F You Want. The show launched at the end of April and claims to have learned from its past mistakes. In this video, we're going to revisit What Not to Wear. We're going to talk a bit about why it was a problem, and we're going to use that as a way to compare it to the new show, Wear Whatever the F You Want. We'll talk about the show's cultural impact, we'll talk about its problems, and what it might have taught us about fashion and consumption. And we're going to do this to see if the new show really is offering us something different or better. Importantly for this channel, our discussion today is going to be rooted in consumption as it relates to fashion and transformation. So let's get into it and let's talk about what not to wear first. What Not to Wear first aired in 2003 and ran for a decade, their last season closing out in 2013. That is wild. I watched the show in, I don't know if it was its first year or second year, but I was in grade 4. I was around 9 or 10 years old. I grew up with that show. And the show followed a basic structure. You get the secret footage of the participant. They ambush them, tell them that their wardrobe sucks, and they can get a brand new wardrobe with $5,000 if they play by the rules. There's the wardrobe trashing segment, the 360 segment. Oh, and before all of that, can't forget the reviewing the secret footage and snarking on the contestant segment.
Special occasion.
It screams, I'm crazy!
You know, it looks like the entire decade of the 80s threw up all over you.
So after all of these segments, they'd be presented with some rules. Then they were tasked with going shopping in accordance with those rules on day 1. Day 2, Stacey and Clinton would surprise them and then do some shopping with the contestant. There would be the makeover and then the final reveal. One of the core concepts of this show and shows like it is that to change your life, you need to change your stuff. A new look could unlock confidence, desirability, professionalism. Buying new clothes wasn't the perk, that was the transformation that was supposed to also in some way change or impact who you are on the inside. It reinforced the early 2000s beliefs that self-improvement could be achieved through shopping. Packaging consumption is both empowerment and entertainment. This show really leaned on the classic formula. They didn't create it, but they were one of the shows that really promoted it. You frame somebody's personal appearance as a problem. Maybe they are having trouble getting dates or they're stuck in their career. You present fashion as the fix to that problem. Fix your fashion, you're going to be happier because you're going to get more dates and you're going to advance your career. And then you present the final reveal as the redemption arc. Their life is different, they're changed, and they're happier now, and they can go and do those things. Stacey and Clinton were positioned as fashion authorities on the show. They weren't just stylists, but they were the arbiter of rules and taste. They introduced prescriptive fashion rules, like wearing horizontal stripes will make you wider, always define the waist. Capri pants are going to cut you off and make you look shorter. And these rules were often presented as just truths or facts. And maybe some of them are. Like maybe if me as a 5'4" woman wore a capri pant, my legs would look shorter. But all of these rules hinge on what is considered desirable beauty, which tends to be somebody who is, especially for women, tall, not too tall. Like you want to make yourself look taller if you're shorter, shorter if you're taller. Apparently everybody just needs to look slimmer, and all of the silhouettes that are recommended are to make women appear smaller or slimmer. And a lot of the discussion and rules were heavily skewed around concepts like appropriateness, to look appropriate, respectable, looking age appropriate, looking put together, and a lot of feminization of their guests. You know, if the guests didn't like to wear dresses, they were gonna be put in the dress if they identified as a woman, because that's what women do, but also I think it enhances the dramatics of the appeal.
As a woman, I assume. Yes, yeah. Okay. Sometimes you got to give people a little bit more of a hint, you know?
I don't know, makeover shows to me really demonstrate the social constructed and performativity of gender, because you are putting in clothes and putting people in things to signal somebody's femininity. Like the classic, I don't wear a dress, put them in a dress, put women who don't wear makeup into makeup. Everybody got a heel. Like literally everybody got a heel. The focus was on figure flattering because it's assumed that you would want that.
I wanted to show you this as an example, really about what you can do to flatter your figure and ways in which to express your personality that don't look costuming.
A modest, appropriate, age appropriate, grown up. These are things that are quite often not pushed onto men quite the same. Have you ever heard somebody say to a man that's not age appropriate? That's typically a thing said to women when they're wearing like short skirts or short dresses or like tank tops. Not tank tops, like a tube top or something. There are certain styles that are like too young for you. And it's all like, I think conforms or is part of the system of like the surveillance of women's bodies. While the rules were meant to be helpful and to give participants things that they could grab onto when they were shopping for themselves, like really easy things that if you're maybe somebody who doesn't have a lot of knowledge with fashion, okay, if I'm petite, then I should go for smaller prints. Really like clear rule to absorb. And so you go and you look at the prints and you go, that one's kind of big. I'm going to go for the smaller version. And one of the things we touched just a little bit on standards of beauty, and I'm sure we could take that analysis and really run with it and make a whole episode. We can make a whole episode on that. But the thing about the rules too, really, I felt like was about conformity and having your style be respected by other people. And really, I feel like factoring in what other people think of your style. Personal taste and self-expression were not the core tenets of the show or things that they promoted, because these were often viewed as the roadblocks to the wardrobe and why they were the problem. And by the end of the show's run, the particular styles of the guests that were brought on, I think, leaned more and more extreme to heighten the impact of the makeover. And like I was watching some clips as refreshers, and there was a flight attendant who had a really like sweet maybe appearance. I'm gonna put a photo up. She's an iconic guest. I also watched one of somebody who's like a practicing witch. It was the unconventional aspect or the extremeness, I guess, that made these people unapproachable or needed fixing.
Do you realize that this is a costume, right? I
Well, it's part of who I am. It's not just costume wear.
The idea of you allowing people to see you in a light that makes you more approachable may, in fact, help you in your career.
I can see the point, but I can't give up the clothes.
If they dressed a little bit more appropriate according to maybe normal ideas of appropriateness, what average people on the street might be dressing, then that's the fix. I gotta say, if you have a witchy aesthetic, your desire is not to be dressing like random people on the street. You know what I mean? Like there's something that draws you to that I think should be respected and honored that the show didn't really do well. And
No self-respecting modern day witch can wear these.
Everybody wears stripes.
It's so stereotypical. I mean, it's like
You're
unless you're
supposed
gonna
to.
let a house fall on you and lie there is no point in having these. Explain.
Okay, that is more for ritual and going to dinner.
Look at
That's
this.
for events.
There's no such thing as ritual and going for dinner, Albert.
And that is, that's for
Honestly.
Yeah.
the vampire's ball, the witch's ball. I need that to work. That's
evil
part
queen.
of my work.
Really?
Yeah.
But you never wear this outside of your costume
Witch's
witchness.
honor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
all right.
mine.
I don't want to say that they ignored personal style altogether, but it was really on the back burner. And I kind of feel like conformity was a big message of the show because conformity meant other people would like you more. And as somebody who watched this show starting at 9 years old, I didn't have models of fashion in my own life and people to teach me about fashion or ideas of fashion or really ideas of beauty. So I turned to shows like this, especially because in my eyes as a literal 9-year-old, 10-year-old child, these are experts. They know if this is the way to look good, this is what you got to do. And so I absorbed messages about respectability and femininity and womanhood. And while what not to wear isn't to blame for these things specifically, I think they reinforced ideas that were already out there at the time. The $5,000 shopping spree was really framed as like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And with inflation, even with the oldest episode having gone off the air over a decade ago, $5,000 would still be a lot of money to replace somebody's wardrobe today. It was a chance to finally get it right. Their previous style was perceived or discussed like a failure. Their new wardrobe was the reward for letting go. The makeover show is part of haul culture. It doesn't get framed and looked at with the same kind of lens because it's not an influencer all, showcasing all the stuff they bought, but it has a much more like moral coding, I think. This person is struggling, so obviously it's the right thing to buy them a whole new wardrobe. The idea really that like identity and validation itself can be purchased, or external change can create internal change. It validates one of the central messages of consumer culture. You can buy your way into happiness. One of the central critiques of the show is the shame-based editing. Participants were often mocked for being sloppy or lazy, frumpy, really hallmark words on the show. The ambush format was also humiliating. To be surprised and you'd be told behind the scenes, like, they know that they're being filmed for this, but they don't know what not to wear. Even if a guest knew that they weren't fashionable, being ambushed on national TV may be a humiliating experience for some.
There's a lady who actually wears her costumes as a kissing wench out in public when she's not working.
Please, fashion nights, bring on the wench. There she is.
Oh, wow! Check out that outfit!
Although I don't believe there's a possibility one of these episodes could have aired without consent, so I believe that consent is involved. I think people consented because of the opportunity and wanting to get the $5,000, and so they'll deal with a bit of humiliation if that's kind of what it takes. But it was also very much a part of the format at the time of humilitainment. And the hosts really leaned into like snark and making jokes and judgment under the guise of tough love. Clinton later talked about how the show was cringy and that like the filming of the show was a bit toxic, and both of the contestants really realized some of the harms of the show, like the editing style and the disregarding of personal style or the strong emphasis on rules. Guests who didn't naturally conform, they were pushed to adopt a more conventional look, and often under the guise of being respectable, another loaded term. And guests who resisted this were often portrayed as difficult.
I don't really care. I dress for myself and I like that outfit. Stacey and Clinton are in for the fight of their life with me.
You ready?
Are you ready?
Bring it. We're so ready.
What do you want me to sit here and say? You don't like anything if it looks like that, if it looks like this, if it looks like that. I mean, you guys aren't gonna like it, so what's the point?
I'm not sure how to talk to you.
You should be able to trust us when we say that an expensive shoe does not fix a trashy outfit. When you should be able to trust
So
us
I'm
when we
nothing
say...
but trash is
No,
what you're
no, no,
saying.
no, no, no,
I
that's not what
obviously don't have any class.
We're telling you, as two stylists, your clothes look cheap.
So if you want to know why I have a wall up and I'm a bitch, this is why. I haven't decided if I'm going to follow the rules yet.
I want to be able to rise above this, but it makes me angry that she can't see that there's so much more to her, A, than her boobs, and B, her attitude.
And like, why would you resist people who are the professionals and who are the ones who are trying to provide you help? There are a number of guests who are framed that way. Personal aesthetic was dialed down. They're goths and punks and boho or culturally informed styles that were kind of ignored or erased, or if they were dressing at 100, they turned the dial down to 5. There was rarely attempts to integrate old pieces into the new wardrobe.
This is one of my gothic Lolita outfits. I think I look cute.
I would say this dress works on somebody probably under the age of 10 for regular everyday gear and only as a costume for a grown-up.
Fashion.
In Japan,
Sure.
we have got to figure out how that style is going to be found for you maybe from a different avenue.
Let's show you how to do corporate wear.
This is a great piece for you because it's almost like a blouse and a jacket, so it's sort of like a blacket.
At its core, what not to wear positioned itself or shopping as the solution for internal discomfort. It's true that internal problems can manifest themselves outwardly, like if you are experiencing depression or feelings of inadequacy, or you're experiencing grief or loss, you're having a tough time just lifing, this can manifest into personal style. But instead of therapy, go get some clothes. Body confidence was also regularly pitched through buying better clothes.
So pretty.
Can you look in the mirror and tell me that you don't look pretty in this dress?
I'm really not crazy about the color A. I just really, there's like no cleavage up here, even though it is low cut. I get that.
I can see your bra from where I'm standing, so what do you mean there's no cleavage?
I'm not crazy about the dress.
It does sound a little bit like without the crutch of the skin tight, very revealing clothes, you doubt your own beauty.
Maybe, yes.
Okay, but that's what's frustrating is to see how pretty you look and for you not to be able to see it.
This absolutely mirrors what we see today in retail therapy. The show never never wanted people to think about what happens after the $5,000 runs out. What happens when you experience the next messy life situation? If you get dumped or divorced or your pet dies, you get fired from work. When life gets hard again, what happens? We're not building people up for success. What Not to Wear, any reality TV show, is entertainment first. I don't expect Stacey and Clinton or What Not to Wear to offer people therapy. I'm not deluded enough to think that, and we're now kind of getting into the new show territory. What I kind of want to say about the old show and the new show is that there is a possibility of consuming this content from an entertainment point and not actually going into your closet and wanting to do this for yourself, or from internalizing potentially harmful messages about gender or about body or consumerism. And with the new show, I'm not expecting perfection. It's still a reality show. And at its core, it's a makeover show. And expecting something that is fundamentally different is setting ourselves up for failure, because it's still a makeover show. So now let's talk about the new show. The new show has a new format. It's still kind of like a multi-day setup, but the format is, I think, kind of different and also a bit unique for a makeover show. So this whole show is about like fantasy style.
We decided to get back together again for a whole new show because, you know what? The world has changed.
And so have we.
In your wildest dreams, you probably have a way that you'd like to present yourself to the rest of the world. So we're trying to teach people to listen to their own internal voice rather than all the exterior noise.
The whole point is to be yourself, and you're never going to be yourself if you're following somebody else's idea of fashion. We want to give people permission and the opportunity to really explore who they want to be.
They bring on guests who have a fantasy style that they've always wanted to have, but they haven't had a chance or the confidence to do it for whatever reason. So day one, they meet with the client and they talk about the fantasy style. They get put into like a wardrobe room. I think they call it the wardrobe warehouse. Well, I know I watched it. I watched all the episodes. And they got to try on whatever they wanted. Everything in this wardrobe warehouse was their size. And so this fantasy element allows contestants or participants to kind of live out dreams and live out fantasies, and also even push those fantasies to maybe some of their extremes. The end of that day, they wear their favorite outfit out in public to give them like a real life experience wearing these clothes. Like, could you actually wear this out in public? Do you feel comfortable? Like, what's the reception of other people? Day two, a trusted friend or loved one joins and they have a conversation with Stacey and Clinton as well as the guest or like the participant. And they kind of talk about, all right, if this is the fantasy, is this grounded in reality and how do we bring it back or more to reality? That's the intention anyway. Then there's the reveal at the end. I do find that the makeover element in this show is much smaller than in the first one. You do see the makeover people twice because they help them create their look for day one and they do like a final makeover in day two. And while in the What Not to Wear original show, there was Nick and Carmody, and then there was eventually Ted and Carmody. While they were still a minor part of the show, I kind of feel like makeup and hair, they were present, but it was smaller than previous. This structure, I think, is more reflective and guest centered. And let's talk about some of the good first. So let's talk about some of the good first, because there's good to come out of this show. And one of the things that the show does really well is honoring personal style and having a more guest-centered, positive experience. The 8 episodes had pretty disparate styles, which I think has more opportunity for viewers to see themselves potentially in these styles. The first style was like a Paris Hilton inspired style, ended up being kind of like girly, beachy chic. There was a punk rock style, there was a bohemian style, there was a country style. Those were honored way more than they were reshaped. While fashion rules do come up occasionally, like balancing volume or choosing print, they tend to be in the sections where Stacey and Clinton are talking to themselves and setting up the room for the contestant. I think that's one of the ways around of being prescriptive to the person. If they're witnessing things that the person is gravitating towards as well, like one of the participants, I think it was the very first one, where they said, oh, I noticed that she really likes to structure her thing in this way, or like she likes traditional style rules. And they helped give that to her, even though in the discussions that are at least shown to the audience, they're not having the overt discussions of the style, like rules that the person is following.
Like Prince?
But I do think it can still use prints and look sophisticated. And the idea, especially with somebody this petite, is that if you use prints, you have to use them in a way that's really going to work for them. Prints have to be proportionate with your body type. So we have to find a happy medium.
They do, though, speak openly about breaking rules. One of the small ones that I picked up on twice was mixing metals. I think the traditional wisdom is that if you're wearing silver earrings, the other metal elements like your hardware on your purse or your belt buckle would also match. So it would be all silver or all gold. They say it doesn't matter. Do what you want. There's also a bit of a shift around gender conformity, although it doesn't go all the way. It is most notable in Al's episode. Al is a trans man and wants an eclectic, somewhat androgynous style and wants to mix elements from like both the genders of clothing. And the show, I think, really welcomes fluidity, and they have conversations about degendering fashion, which are really great. I think Al's episode may be the one that breaks the most style rules, and there are some conversations about that, and very little pushback from Stacey and Clinton. What I mean by that is the show doesn't frame Al or Al's style as rebellious, it's just their style. And they celebrate what works for him and what he desires for himself. However, the show still loves to put the folks who identify as women into the dress, into the heels. Like everybody got a heel. Oh, I think it is also interesting to note that like, well, What Not to Wear was primarily women. The show had a 60-40 split. Oh, just under that. 5 of the 8 episodes are people who identified as women, and then 3 of the 8 are people who identified as men. And one of the reasons why I do think that many of the participants were given heels is because a lot of the outfits really felt like special outfits, like what you'd wear on a date night or a special occasion, and not what actually people are wearing day to day. And I think for special events or date nights, these are occasions where somebody who may be open to wearing heels would wear the heel. There wasn't no flat options, but like most of the flats ended up being in like a sneaker format. There is one major gap that the show doesn't address though, and that is body diversity. All the participants in the show appear to wear straight sizing, although size is not really discussed in this episode or in this show, so I can't know for sure. But I really feel like a discussion of size, as well as featuring plus size women on the show. Plus size women have been subject to a lot of prescriptive fashion rules, often framed around shame or body correction. Like so often plus size people are targeted with advice around camouflaging areas, and they're often expected to want to look smaller, ignoring plus size people, as well as a discussion of like body and body image, I think is a really missed moment in a show called Wear Whatever the F You Want. It would have been amazing to have plus size people featured on the show, but even if all of these contestants that they had stayed, there still could have been discussions about like body proportion or size, or that like not everything needs to be figure flattering. Our goal in life doesn't need to be making ourselves look smaller. Plus size creators, I watch many of them, like go thrifting or trying on clothes. They talk about how hard it is to find clothes that fit and that reflects their personal style. This would have been a great place to confront that tension. This could have been the perfect time to discuss some of the fashion rules that What Not to Wear had in the past, to discuss problems in this space, hearing from plus size people themselves, and to model that fashion and style is not exclusively or primarily for people in straight sizing. And also to model what style freedom and wearing whatever the F you want looks for across a wide variety of body types. So I did talk about earlier about the shame-based editing. That is gone. There's a lot of positivity and support. There's no real snarky jokes or poking fun at the contestants. And I think one of the big shifts of this is having the participants themselves be the ones reaching out and maybe nominating themselves instead of other people. So there is much more positive consent right from the jump. They're actively choosing to be on the show instead of being surprised. Let's now talk about the biggest thing about this show, the makeover redemption arc. Even with the tone shift and deeper conversations happening with the show, it still clings to the old reality TV framework, which I think in some ways is to be expected given that it's a makeover show. Personal transformation is best communicated visually with a great before and after. The starker the change, the more dramatic the change is perceived to be. Style is the communicator that you've grown, even if not a lot changes. Now, this is not to say that clothing has no power, it has no weight, it plays no emotional role in our lives, and cannot affect our lived reality. That is fundamentally untrue. Participants on the show as well talk about things like body image and grief and loss and confidence and feeling disconnected from themselves. And the show gives them space to say it, which I appreciate. Clinton himself says, this is a direct quote, "It's a great feeling when you walk into a room knowing that what you are reflecting to the rest of the world matches who you are on the inside." That kind of alignment is incredibly powerful, especially for people who may have lost themselves for some reason. Episode 7 features a baker named Maurice who wants to open his first ever brick and mortar store. And he expresses that he believes his style may be holding him back or could hold him back in the future in a professional setting or in a professional capacity, because people do make snap judgments about you and your capabilities or your creativity, whatever might be relevant to you in your field based on how you dress. Clinton calls this out and says that your style will say something about you before you even open your mouth. And he's right that your style will communicate something about you, whether you like it or not. You cannot opt out of that. It will do that. The only thing you really can do is choose not to care. And choosing not to care may or may not be in your best interest. In Maurice's case, it might not be in his best professional interest. There are social and professional consequences to that. So style in this example can be a tool, and you are playing with the tools of the system and you're using them to your advantage. One of the conversations that happened that has struck me the most about the power of style was in episode 5 with Al. They dig into how style can be a tool of like self-affirmation, and for a long time he's prioritized safety and comfort over expression, which is an incredibly understandable thing to do. And there's a moment where his friend Z is talking to Stacy and Clinton about Al, and this is what Z says.
I just felt like it was really weighing on him.
What was weighing on Al about his style?
I mean, it's hard being a young queer individual, knowing that you're walking into the world every single day looking absolutely nothing like you feel inside.
Yeah.
That's incredibly dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves a few outfits that they really can go somewhere and be like, yeah, I look good right now. I look like how I want to be representing myself.
That is why style can matter. Another episode that I think also showcases the power of maybe experimentation, or the show specifically, is episode 2 with Patrick. He is a father and a punk music lover, and he spent nearly 20 years of his life struggling with an eating disorder. He's been in therapy for many years, and he's done a lot of work. Like, great on him. Congratulations to him. And for him, dressing up like one of the punk rock musicians that he watched growing up and now has been a real fantasy for him. One of the reasons why this episode I think works so well is because his transformation happens after he's done a lot of work. He's the only person in the show that acknowledges he's in therapy. And I'm not saying other people aren't, or that they must declare so. We just don't know, which is fine and fair. But he's very forthcoming about his journey on his body. And so this is not him starting off his healing journey or trying to use clothing as a way to kickstart healing. It's a way of culminating or celebrating the work that's been done so far. And also, I want to say, celebrating how far he's come. He's not celebrating he's gained or lost weight. That's not the focus. He says it felt almost cathartic, a full circle moment that let him reclaim a version of himself he once didn't feel allowed to express. This works because of the position he came to the show in. I think all of these examples show that there are positive ways that style impacts people's lives in real, tangible ways. These are powerful examples, but they're still channeled through the aesthetics. And the show prioritizes dramatic transformations. Style might help to reflect internal change that can be true, but it can also make it look like change has happened when it has not. Style may help in some ways, but it can't untangle things or in and of itself address something like grief or loss. It's not going to heal trauma or body dysmorphia. An episode I feel like encapsulates this problem is episode 3 with Freedom. Her life has been shaped over the past 10 years with cancer. She had cancer in the early 2000s. It came back. Her multiple sisters had cancer. Her daughters had cancer. One of her sisters ended up passing away from cancer. Like 6 to 7 years full of incredibly challenging life. She talks about losing herself, which is, I believe her, and it is so incredibly understandable. I can understand how style is not a priority when you're fighting for survival and you're dealing with incredible loss. And while her makeover may help boost her confidence, it really seems like it did, clothes aren't going to resolve that kind of grief. Clothes will most likely not help her process her losses. That work still needs to be done. And the show's feel-good energy can blur some of that and can make it appear as though the transformation can start and stop with style. You now have your confidence. Go forth in the world. You are fundamentally changed and different. Majority of the guests on the show would benefit from therapy if they're not in it already. I think therapy is beneficial for most people. That's my general belief. And so I feel like you put any average random person, there's going to be something going on in their lives, in a lot of cases, that they would benefit from therapy. And this can also, like, our view on our personhood and our bodies impact how we show up in the world and the clothes that we choose to put on our bodies. The last episode of the show, episode 8 with Selena, is one of the biggest aesthetic transformations. She goes from goth to preppy. She admits to hiding behind the goth aesthetic, which is very valid, but I can't help but wonder if she was selected because of the dramatic transformation that would happen from de-gothing a goth. I think it plays into some of the common beliefs about goth style, and that it would just be visually satisfying. And like I think goth style is one of those styles that is not appreciated and people feel like is wrong in some way, so we get the opportunity of a willing participant to de-goth themselves. And I feel like, I mean, look, Selena's allowed to want what she wants for herself. She's allowed to want to look preppy 100%. I wanted the goth girl to get her moment, you know, to like maybe be a little bit more approachable goth. Like we did the approachable punk rock earlier. Maybe that felt too close to that, so they didn't want to do approachable goth. But I think that would have been great, especially given ideas about like goths and punk aesthetic, even like rock or grunge aesthetics. Anyway, her fantasy look from day one tips heavily into costume. The hairstylist put her in a terrible blonde wig. Not like Selena, she wanted to, you know, experiment being blonde. It was on the team who gave her that wig. And she goes to a professional networking event in what like really feels like a costume. And I think this is one of the few episodes on the show where the style fantasy tips heavily into costume. And the glam team is responsible for helping to push the participant in that direction. And I'm torn as to whether that is a affirming or a positive experience to get to play out such a fantasy to such a degree, you know, because trying extremes can potentially be informative and liberating. But I also wonder if they're being pushed in that direction or being encouraged or dressed up for a storyline. She also shares that her fantasy style is inspired by her sister, and you get to meet and talk with the sister as well. And this entirely complicates the idea of self-expression here. Are we really helping her find her style if it's modeled on somebody who she wants to be? And can anybody really find themselves through clothes? By the end, Selena, she does look fantastic. Her final look is cohesive, it's very pretty, and it's a satisfying completion to the art. But her journey specifically feels really neat because she's happy with the way she looks, and she has this new cohesive style. Like the host gave her what she wanted, and she's implied to have figured it out. But like, has she? And Selena works in a creative industry. She is an influencer. She's somebody who didn't need to be de-gothed for like professional reasons. She made her she built her following on her goth aesthetic, or that was part of it, I should say. She came in with green hair, taking away some of the last vestiges of her gothness. To me, feels similar, but also different than to the first episode, where the woman with curly hair got a nice blowout for the final reveal. I think both of these things were done to create a more impactful visual transformation, but I also think that they are still messages about appropriateness and beauty and professionalism. And all of these neat resolutions, they look and feel good, which is great. We're meant to believe, though, that this physical transformation has shifted something very real in them. But this is the illusion of the makeover culture that has continued here. Confidence may come instantly for a moment, but that does not mean that it is lasting, or that a confidence about how you appear in a moment will translate to months or years down the line or other elements of your life. And this is where we end today on consumption as entertainment still. To its credit, Wear Whatever the F You Want is a more thoughtful show than its original, offering, I think, better treatment of the guests, gender, beauty, as well as personal style, and the show is fun to watch. The hosts, I think, have good chemistry too. And I think it's also possible for people to watch the show and have some positive takeaways or not get pulled into overconsumption or consumption culture. I think it's possible to consume the show purely for entertainment and pleasure, but it does still promote old narratives, emotional growth visualized through consumption. Confidence still arrives through the right pair of shoes, and self-expression, even when it is sincere or sincerely celebrated, it is still coming through consumption. And this is worth pausing, in my opinion, because if the underlying message is that healing or happiness is best expressed or even unlocked through stuff, we have not fully moved on from the past in perhaps the most meaningful way. And even if the consumption is more inclusive, more creative, and more affirming, it's still selling the same fantasy. And we may feel better by consuming this fantasy because it is better. The solution to our problems is still consumption. And I think by focusing so heavily on consumption and stuff, it can potentially suggest that your appearance can matter more than who you are. And I'm not anti-fashion. I'm not anti-clothes. I like style, I like clothes, but I also know that in our current cultural moment, there is still an overwhelming belief or an overarching belief that we can be different people through buying different things. If you don't feel good today, the solution can be to go buy a blazer from Winners, to go buy a better skirt or a better pair of pants. Instant cheer up. Instant visible difference to yourself. We can shop our way to happiness and confidence. We've seen that narrative before and it doesn't always serve us. So if you're watching this show and you love this style, great. But I also invite you to potentially ask yourself, what are they selling me? Because it's not just clothes. There is a mindset, cultural attitudes, and beliefs that are also being promoted and sold and normalized through shows like this. I really wish that the show incorporated some of the contestants or participants' favorite pieces from home. Like, I bet you that each of them has things that they actually love to wear, even if it's just 2 or 3 pieces. Like, I think a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people have a favorite jean that they like to wear, or a favorite pant to work that they like to wear, even a favorite t-shirt. How can you incorporate their current favorites with this style? And ultimately, like if you're saying, Shauna, it's entertainment or it's a makeover show, what do you expect? I think that's one of the ways to bridge the gap. Communicating education, or like, how do you analyze your wardrobe? How do you know if something's working for you? Or even something that is relatively common knowledge but could still be a helpful reminder could be like, how do you develop style words? There could be small tidbits of education that can be helpful for the person as well as the people at home that are more about like self-discovery tools or wardrobe discovery tools, opposed to prescriptive rules like we're helping before. There's a difference between telling somebody how they should wear things or like what's good for their body or their lifestyle, and giving people tools to understand their preferences or their style better. It did feel like there was little education or tools of that nature happening in the show, which seemed to be, I feel like, a way to remove themselves from the prescriptive role that these hosts had from the early 2000s. So that's everything for me today. If you've seen the reboot, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Did you enjoy it? Was it fun to watch? I did have a good time watching it. Not gonna lie, I had a few moments of things that helped me think about style as a communication tool, and both positives and negatives. And I think some of the fantasy style elements were fun to watch, and they were fun because the person seemed to be enjoying themselves, and I really like that emphasis of seeing people and hearing them. So let me know your thoughts on the show and if you enjoyed it, and what also, if you watched it, if you have a favorite episode. Thanks so much for watching and being here today. I would love it if you would subscribe to catch more content like this, and I hope to see you again here for a new video.